You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionFit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it begins. Yes, our broadcast week begins here on the Options Insider Radio Network with your bi-weekly options extravaganza known as the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the aforementioned network. Pleased to have you joining us here to kick off your week. Remember, you can get this content pretty much everywhere under the sun at this point, on demand on just about every platform you could think of. Of course, if you want to engage live, you head on up to the Plus. Of course, you can get most of the live shows throughout the week. If you want to go above and beyond and get the exclusive content as well, including an awesome pro Q&A coming up tomorrow with our friend, the short vol legend. He's our first returning guest, not to talk about vol this time. You guys have been bugging us. He dropped a hint at the end of his last Q&A, said if there's enough interest, maybe he'd come back and do a deep dive into all things blackjack. Well, yeah, there was a lot of interest. You folks kept bugging us. When are we going to do that? When are we going to do that? So it is coming up tomorrow. You get your pro Q&A with the Blackjack Hall of Famer, Mr. Don Schlesinger. You're going to deep dive as deep as you could possibly want to go into all the mechanics and nuances of pro-grade blackjack. You guys are already hitting us up. It's important to get your questions in early because he doesn't want to kind of help prepare what level you folks are at. That's how he wants to set up his material. So check it out. If you're intrigued by that, you haven't joined us in the secret club yet, head on over to theoptionsinsider.com/pro. You get that. You get oddities. You get all the other Q&As we've done out there. And there's been some fascinating guests have rotated through that hot seat already and many more to come. And of course, however you listen live after the fact, keep hitting us up. Questions, comments, insights, pearls of wisdom. We do love to hear from all of you guys and gals out there today. And before we hear from who is joining us on the program today, it is our first show of the week. So we have to kick it off in style. Once again, listeners, can you name that 80s wrestler? I'll give you some hints on this one. This is not going to probably leap to mind. It's going to be a bit of a more difficult one. We're getting into the deeper cuts now. And this person, this one you're going to get right away, literally in the first couple of seconds, or you're not. I'm going to put it out there. This person, kind of a solid mid-tier, mid-Carter kind of guy. You would see him, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know that guy. He's fun, and I'd watch him. Didn't really have a crazy gimmick, was kind of just go in there, go about his moves in the ring. You'd appreciate him for what he does, and you move on to the next match. He wasn't the guy, you were as a little kid were cheering for when WWE came to town. You weren't buying an action figure of this guy. You'd probably go cheer for your Hogans and your Andres and your Machos and your Warriors and all those guys. This guy you'd see, like, oh yeah, I like that guy, but then he'd move on to the next. So kind of a solid mid-Carter, I would say, out there. As we head on into, can you name that 80s wrestler? right. The song keeps on going for a while there. You're going to get this one or you're not. Let's first go out now to the land of the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. So I got a feeling Uncle Mike might know this one. But let's see if the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian, like I said, a kind of a solid, a workman-like type guy, if you get my hint out there, sir. Can you possibly guess whose theme that was, sir?
All right. Well, I don't know. So I'm going through my favorite mid-carders. And I'm going to go on a limb and say the Junkyard Dog.
Oh, an excellent guess. Excellent guess. I would go out on a limb and say JYD had a gimmick. This guy playing today, not so much. It was kind of, I guess it was in his name and the song, and that was kind of about it. So not JYD. A good guess, though. A good guess. Not JYD. We go on out now to the land of the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. A, welcome back to the program. And B, can you name that wrestler, sir?
I'm struggling with this one, I got to admit. So, debating between, I'm going to go with Tito Santana.
Another solid workman-like guy, not really with much of a gimmick, kind of a mid-carder there. You're right. That's both good guesses. No, you kind of had to hear, the only real clue in this song is in like the first couple of seconds. If you heard the couple of hammer strikes there. If you heard the hammer strikes, then who, dare I say it, would it be?
Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Yes, Greg the Hammer Valentine. Yes, he perhaps one of the most workmanlike of all the wrestlers there in the 80s. Yes, the markets are getting hammered. Let's get to it. It is time for the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading. And dare I say it, we didn't know how appropriate this wrestler would be today when we picked him. Because the markets are indeed getting sledgehammered out there today. Coming into showtime, S&P closing in on 2.5% to the dark side. Dow at about 2.4%. NASDAQ threatening 3% to the dark side. So a lot of red on the screen out there today, listeners. Pretty much the worst day. You got to go back a couple of months to really find another day that kind of even comes close to what we're seeing out there today. Of course, all that means coming into showtime, we saw a little bit of green on the old vol screen. We had VIX at threatening a 27, about a 26.75 or so. Puts it up about 8.25 points or so from last show. That's a big pop, 8.25 points from our last show on Thursday. VVIX back up to that more pandemic-friendly level of 140, kind of the level it was hanging out at for a lot of the pandemic era. That puts it up, a whopping 25 points from where it was this time on Thursday's show. VXX back in a 30 handle, listeners, 30.75, up 5.25 points. Our other favorite eroding friend, UVXY, couldn't quite make the leap to 30, but it got back a lot of its juice as well, 28.25. Up 6.5. Man, it was threatening 20 not too long ago in the other direction. Got down to a 21 and change out there. So, yeah, that's a big move out there for the ever eroders. And Vol Q, a.k.a. the NASDAQ Vol, at about 23.25, also up 6.5 points from our last show. So a lot of red on the screen, a lot of green on the Vol screen, a lot to unpack. Let's go out. He did get it, albeit with my help, but he did get it. So first, Mr. Meatball, if you have any enduring memories of Greg the Hammer Valentine, have at it, sir. And then B, how about them markets getting hammered, sir?
Yeah, well, he definitely was a workman. I will agree there. I mean, the guy like flipped between heel and babyface, but everybody liked him because he was good at his job. I think his best feud and most famous feud was probably with Jake the Snake. I believe the Snake won that feud, as we are one to expect, but that was a big one. And then I believe he was in some tag teams with a lot of people who ended up being huge stars down the line.
He did tag with Honky, I know, for a little while. Rhythm and Blues.
Oh, yeah, that was terrible.
They tried to give him a gimmick.
So yeah, the Honky Talk Man may have been the worst character ever.
They stole Honky's gimmick and they put it on Greg the Hammer Valentine. Recipe for a disaster.
That was, yeah, folks, that was a sad state of affairs for for the wrestling world when the Honky Tonk Man and Greg the Hammer got together. I gotta say, on Friday during Vol Views, we were talking about, hey, does this set up for the kind of not a great Thursday, bad Friday, and huge sell-off Monday? And Mark, I'm just going to go and say that the answer is yes.
It's quite a daring prediction, sir. You went on a limb on that one.
Interestingly, the airlines are up today. I don't know what the deal is there. But like American's up, UAL, but everything else is down. Bonds are up mildly, but like gold can't get a lift, silver can't get a lift. The major NASDAQ names are getting smoked. And one thing I was kind of pondering, and I'd love your guys' thoughts on this. All right. So what really launched the stock market was when at the depths of the pandemic, right? At the depths of the lockdown, all this money hit accounts that had nothing, and they didn't have anything to do with it. So what do? They go and they buy stocks and stock options, and Robinhood blows up, and the market blows higher. All right. Well, here we are, and we're now near an all-time high, and people are generally gainfully employed if they want to be. All those benefits, the free money from the government is ending. Does this set up for an absolute collapse of the Robinhood trader, of traders using Robinhood to try and create dollars for themselves? And, what does that do to Robinhood itself? And where do we go from there? And it's just something I've been pondering today. Does a major sell-off potentially cause blow up Robinhood? And I'm not sure the answer isn't yes.
It's funny because you're right. That is on the surface. You'd think all of these newly minted traders have pretty much been born in a bull market, so they've never really seen the blood red on the screen for a sustained period of time. Will that shake them out? We were joking before the show. Everyone says BTFD. I think we all agreed right now is not that moment. You don't want to jump in front of this one. You don't want to catch that falling knife. Let the sell off. Let it peter out first before you start diving in there. But we did have a guest on TWIFO last week from RJO, made an interesting point about that. He said, everyone is talking BTFD and maybe these markets are overvalued, but still, he said there's still $5 trillion sitting in the sidelines in money markets. And so that is still a pretty strong cushion. So we'll see if some of that $5 trillion starts pouring in. Because remember, listeners, all this red we're talking about, blood red, we're still at a 43.25 or so in the S&P. Remember, not that long ago on their election show last year, not even a year ago, we were 1,000 points below. So we were dipping and flirting with the 33. So we still have moved quite a bit. We still have a lot of downside we can do yet. So we still are at pretty lofty levels, even with today's sell-off. So everyone's like, oh my God, this sell-off is done now. We can dive in. Remember, there still is more room potentially to run in both directions. Let's head on out now to the land of Uncle Mike. First off, Uncle Mike, welcome to the show. Second, if you have any enduring memories of the most workmanlike Greg the Hammer, have at it. C, what is your answer to Mr. Meatball's question? And D, a four-parter for you. What is lighting up your tape today, sir?
Well, A, thank you for the welcome. It's always a pleasure to be here, of course. B, in terms of Greg the Hammer Valentine, indirectly, he actually made me cry when I was a grade schooler. And
did he hit you with his hammer?
He did not. But when he was a tag team partner with Brutus Beefcake, they were feuding with Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. Those two were my favorites for a while. Back in the mid to early 80s, wow. They came out to
Deep
Born
cut.
in the USA, and those are my favorites. And then I remember when one night, it was actually, I still remember this whole story clear as day. So I remember when Bruce the Barber Beefcake, it was before he was the barber, he was just Greg Valentine's tag team partner. He took a piece of lead and he rubbed it across the eyes of Barry Windham, and so Barry Windham was blinded by that, and that I couldn't handle that as a kid. It really stressed me out. And so this is how my family is. I remember, shortly thereafter, my aunt called just to talk to my mom or something. And that was back in the days before cell phones. He said, hello, hi, can I speak to so-and-so? So my aunt's like, you sound horrible. What's wrong? I'm like, they blinded Barry Windham. And so instead of her saying, she didn't lie to me. She didn't tell me that wrestling was fake or anything like that. She said, well, sometimes you don't get blind forever, and I'm sure he'll be okay. And that made me feel so much better. And sure enough, she was right. Barry Windham recovered from his blindness and went on to have a very wonderful wrestling career. So
wow. That was a deep, insightful, some might say disturbing glimpse into the early psychological trauma of Uncle Mike.
Very much so. Very much so. So anyway, with that being said, there's your little bit of 80s wrestling history for you from my family. C, in terms of what Mark's saying, a lot of times when you have sell-offs like this could be the end of the Robinhood trader. I don't think it'll be the end of Robinhood itself, just because of the fact I remember being at Options Express many years ago, and when options were like the thing, they're still the thing, don't get me wrong, but when we had a big influx of retail traders in like 2005 through 2010, Options Express was the thing back then. This is before Thinkorswim kicked their butts. We actually were in a situation, nothing like what Robinhood is today, but we were very much like the brokerage. Now, when the $3,000 seminars went away, and when the unethical educators went away, and you actually had guys that know what they're doing, such as the option pick coming into play, the get-rich-quick people went away. Now, with that, of course, the DARTs, daily average revenue trades, went down fairly significantly at Options Express, but Options Express was still a very profitable company. And I believe that Robinhood is big enough to where they'll recover from this, not to the levels with which they were a few months back when it was just the thing that anyone talked about, but life will go on for them. And I think eventually they'll go the way that what it seems every small to mid-level broker goes, somebody will buy them. And that's kind of what I think the eventual fate will be for Robinhood. But for the time being, the Robinhood trader, I don't know if they're going to be around much longer because the unemployment benefits aren't going to be what they were. And these people are going to have to start getting jobs again. So I don't think they're going to be around in that spirit of things much longer. But Robinhood in and of itself, I could see lasting. It's not going to be like what it was. And then eventually, like everything, they will get bought. And then I think we're on D right now. Man, you gave me a lot to talk about today. On D right now, in terms of this market, this afternoon, I'm not doing it yet, but this afternoon, I am looking to dip my toe in the water in this market. Now, keep in mind, it is shark-infested waters at this point. So right now, I'm kind of watching and waiting to see if the sharks swim away over the course of the next couple hours. If they don't, I obviously won't. But what I'm looking for is if we can raise, like right now, the S&P is down roughly 100 points. If we go back to the point to where we're at, it's at 43.30 right now. If we go back to like maybe 43.60 within the next hour or so and level off throughout the day, I'm going to give strong consideration to adding some deltas to this market in one way, shape, or form. Reason being is that I've had since I was talking about it last week on the show, I've had a pretty far out of the money put spread a couple months out, and that's really the only exposure with which I've had. And I'm taking a little bit of a hit on that today, but in reality, most of that hit is just from volatility going up as significantly with which it has. And don't get me wrong, it is delta going against me too, but it's one where if the VIX just goes back to where it was on Friday and we have no market movement, I'm not really going to be down that much on this trade, but I'm monitoring it, of course. But for later this afternoon, I might be dipping my toe in the water. To add to what Mark said also, we have not had, in my opinion, significant moves in the bonds that's based upon a 2% down day in the S&P. We've had minimal movement in silver. And so I think that with that, and on top of that, on Friday, we actually had a sell-off in bonds and we had a sell-off in stocks.
Yeah, that was crazy, right?
It really was. And so I think with all those things, I could at least see a potential dead cat bounce. And what I'll be looking to do a little bit later today is probably buy a small position out of the money bullish butterfly of some sort. And I'll explain that a little bit more in the strategy block. So stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah, Mike, one thing I'm thinking about now that we're talking is, and I know we don't talk about very much, but the SIBO skew index and how insanely high it's been the last few weeks. And what's been going on is traders have been dumping at the money puts and calls and slightly out of the money calls on market makers, and then buying up a curbillion of these way out of the money puts. Mark, do you remember a study you were talking about in 2008 about the effect of gamma hedging on the stock market in 08, and the fact that the market makers were long or short so many of these out of the money puts that they had to just unload futures as we drop?
Yeah, it was an accelerant. Yes.
Does that set up here again is another, I think, important question that we need to be discussing?
Well, these levels, you're right, are getting pretty astronomical. I mean, the skew index is hovering around 150. That's kind of a pretty frothy top level for the skew index if you've been following it or know much about it, listeners. And of course, if you're listening to shows like TWIFO, where we break down the puts and call index independently out there in products like the E-mini, you'd see that those puts have been trading at about 30+% premium to the at the money for a while now out there. So there's lofty amounts of premium bid in there, which means, of course, the market makers are short those to high heaven, listeners. So if we do start kicking into these strikes aggressively, I don't think we're quite there yet, but if we do start blowing through strikes to the downside, that could be a factor, a bit of the old gamma accelerant, if you will, listeners out there. Something to keep in mind as we keep on rolling here with the show. By the way, what is driving the airlines higher? You asked earlier, Mr. Meatball. It's like the Biden administration easing restrictions for travelers from the UK and the European Union. So in spite of the blood red sell-off out there, looks like at least a little bit of joy out there for the airlines. Let's see if there's joy for the markets in terms of volume right now. And spoiler alert, listeners, the answer is pretty much yes across the board. Every major index is at, or in some cases, wildly exceeding their ADV already. As we're talking here, VIX right now closing in on 700,000 contracts, 673,000. The ADV has ticked in the other direction. It went down last week, down to 420. It was like 445 or so last week. So that's ticking down. I got a feeling it's going to be going back up after today. SPY already at 5.5 million contracts. The ADV is 4.5. So already blowing the doors off out there. The S 1.55 million contracts. The ADV is 1.46. So it's already surpassed its ADV. The Qs, 1.5 million as well. The ADV is 1.35. Interesting that the Qs have a lower ADV than the S now. That's interesting. And IWM, one of the many flavors of the small caps out there, at 660. The ADV is 656. So ticking past its ADV is already as well. So all the major indices at or very, very much exceeding their ADV out there. Let's go out to the top 10 out there right now. And this looks like this is your 2021 stereotypical top 10, if I do say so myself. You got some old schoolers, you got some memes in there, you got one or two new kids. It's all sorts of fun. Cost you nearly 250,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. Listen, that shows you how frothy things are. That gets you out to Baba out there, 248,000 contracts. Number 9, a newcomer to our top 10. Don't think we've ever parsed this one on the show before. SDC, aka Smile Direct Club. Are they the newest addition to the meme frenzy? Not doing a heck of a lot out there from a stock movement level so far today. Let's see, I just had them up earlier. Let's see where they are right now. But they had a nice range over the last couple of days, almost a $2 range, about a $6.50 stock. So not exactly a crazy one. About a few days ago, they were trading $5.60, got up to about $7.30 or so. Of course, 52-week high, they got up to $16. Let's see when that was. That was back in January. Also, they were an early convert to the meme palooza, and they got up to nearly $16. And haven't quite seen those levels again, but seeing some paper today to the tune of 277,000 contracts for Smile Direct Club. Number 8, AMD, 278,000 contracts. Number 7, NVIDIA, 300K exactly. NVIDIA, kind of a perennial top 10er these days. Number 6, NEO, also a perennial top 10er, 304,000 contracts. Ford, number 5, fighting its way back into the top 10. Ford getting a bit of a shellacking today, off 1270 now, off nearly 90 cents or about 6.3% on the day. Good for 352,000 contracts. All those folks have been loading up on upside again out there in Ford. Perhaps not going to be liking this news today. Number 4, the other half of the symbol twins these days, AMC, 424,000 contracts on the tape, listeners. Number 3, it's Palantir again. a perennial top tenner these days. Good for nearly 500,000 contracts today. 485,000. Let's just look really quickly, see what Palantir is up to. It's off $1.60 or about 5.6%, trading right around $27. So a decent move today for Palantir, but man, that's a lot of paper for Palantir. Surpassed only by number 2, Tesla, 669,000 contracts. And of course, the big dog, Apple. Strangely enough, Apple has yet to surpass 1 million, 998,000. It's close, but not quite there. You think in a day when numbers and indexes and everything else are big names are throwing up 1 million like it's going out of style, you think Apple would already be there, but not so much today. It shows maybe some of that paper spreading out a little bit and hitting crazy newcomers like STC and everything else out there. Speaking of crazy and everything else, you guys have been playing along a lot in our questions of the week. We got a new one, very much inspired by what's going on in the markets today. We put it up there right before showtime. You can get at it at Options is the place to go. We're asking you quite simply, we got the vol popping, we got markets selling off. Is this a blip on the radar, or are you feeling this for a little bit? Very simply, where do you think VIX is going to go out at the end of the week? Kind of a different version, different flavor of our crystal ball game. Gave you 4 choices. The very elevated range, north of 26, which is where it's hanging out right now. The elevated range, so let's say 23 to about 26, 25.99. Let's put it in the frothy range, so 20 to about 23. And bubbling, which is below 20. Get on out there, make your voice heard. So far, folks are betting in the early voting that we're going to hang out where we are right now, very elevated, aka north of 26 with about 40% of the vote. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Get out there at Options, make your voice heard. We do have some new earnings move results reports hot off the presses from our friends over there at ORATS. You guys know where to go to get more of those completely for free, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab on the top of the homepage there, and you can go off to the races. Research until your heart's content out there. This week, again, we got some interesting names. We got Lennar after the bell on the home front there today. Tomorrow, we've got FedEx after the bell, Cracker Barrel before the bell out there. How are those premium rocking horses and fried chicken? How's that going? I guess we'll find out tomorrow. We've got KB Homes and BlackBerry, good old BlackBerry, on Wednesday after the bell. General Mills before the open on Wednesday. Accenture on Thursday. Costco on Thursday after the bell as well. Rite Aid, a.k.a. RAD, before the bell on Thursday. So a lot of names still popping off out there this week. Updated earnings move results, and earnings season reports. The season still holding firm at 86% right now, listeners. But we got some new names popping off, including the Meatball's favorite Darden restaurants. They're popping off on the 23rd before the bell. Will they exceed their $7.50 straddle? I guess we'll find out on Wednesday. Meanwhile, though, it's time for us to find out what the heck is going on out there in the world of weird and wonderful options activity. Yes, it is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let us unleash the Eye of Sauron. Will we regret it? Who knows? Only one way to find out, and that is by doing so and seeing where it fixes its fiery gaze today. And you might think, a day where everything is super red on the screen, folks maybe gobbling up a bunch of puts, maybe, or maybe they think things are overdone. Maybe they're gobbling up some calls on a rebound. We're not seeing that either. That we're seeing people. I guess if there's a theme today to the Odd Block, it is people blowing the doors off on downside puts. They're selling these things both hands. That's our theme of the Odd Block today. Let's kick things off in Ballard Power Systems Inc., ticker symbol BLDP, aka BLDP. This is one of those proton exchange membrane fuel cell makers. So playing in that fuel cell space, the on again, off again fuel cell space. They've been doing this saga for decades now. It's the hot new thing. Oh, it's old technology. Oh, it's the hot new thing. Apparently, it's old technology again today because it's selling off with everything else. Trading $15.12 right now, off about 75 cents or about 4.5% on the day. This is the name that's had an interesting saga over the last year. A year ago, it was trading pretty close to where it is right now, trading 16.30 a year ago. And it kind of hovered in that range, slowly got up to about 23, almost 24 in December. And then it popped aggressively in the meme-a-thon. In the meme palooza, it topped out at 42.28 on February 8th. And then it looks like it just gave it all back. Let's see, by March 8th, it was trading 21 again. So it got cut literally in half in the span of a month. So yeah, that's a pretty aggressive drop. And then it tried to maintain those levels for a little bit, hung out in the low 20s until late April. Then it sold off hard again down to about 1280 or so back in May. It looks like that was the low for the year as well. And then it's kind of been bouncing in this, looks like 18 on the upside and down to about 15 or 14 on the dark side there for the better part of the last few months. But you had quite the heroic run earlier in the year, and that was very short-lived, unfortunately, which this chart is kind of like the fuel cell industry in microcosm here. Everyone's all excited for, oh no, there they go again. So we'll see. We'll see what our Eye of Sauron finds out here today. And as I mentioned, folks are going to town on some out-of-the-money puts. In particular, listeners, they are the OC13 puts. So right now, about $2 out of the money. They went up for 16.5 cents, so they probably were blasting away in a ton. Maybe they did a sweep out there. They did a 26,100 of these bad boys going up again for prices right around 16.5 cents out there. If you're wondering, that's a 56.5 vol, listeners. So they've done about 1,000 more since then. A total of about 27,000 have traded on the day. If you are curious, there are earnings, but not in this cycle. They are in November. So these are not earnings puts. This is someone just drawing a line in the sand for a whole freaking lot of Ballard Power Systems stock at the 13 handle. This was such a big trade. Our friends over there at Orats also run their own scans. It came up on their radar as well. You got to be kind of blind to miss this one out there today. According to their metrics, they rank them by volume versus the 20-day average of volume. And for them, Ballard is number 2 at nearly 11x is 20 days average of volume out there at 37,000 options that traded by the time they did that ratio there. The puts were 35,600 puts and only 1,300 calls. So a lot of put action out there today, listeners. Mr. Meatball, A, does this surprise you that on a huge sell-off day, we're seeing just a fiesta of short puts? And then B, what do you think about these sizable puts here in Ballard Power Systems?
Well, this appears to be opening, and we've been active on the 14s and the 15s as well. This customer ain't messing around. They're looking to collect, for a $13 stock, 20 cents, 17 cents, whatever they ended up getting, is not a terrible yield. I can think of better ways to express that, but the customer's saying, I'll buy the stock till the cows come home below 13. I don't know much about Ballard, but if you like Ballard, then that's not a bad little play to get involved.
Yeah, this is one of the more sizable line in the sands we've seen. So we're going to keep an eye on this one. You don't have to wait long to see how this one works, listeners. Will this line be crossed? Will they buy quite a few shares of Ballard Power shy of the 13 handle? Or will they keep their nice and, I won't say juicy, but get a little bit of juice there, little squeeze there, 16.5 cents in Ballard Power? We shall find out. You like these? Are you a fan of the whole fuel cell industry? You like drawing that line in the sand there? You're going to dive into these? You're going to fade them? Hit us up. Let us know out there as we keep on rolling. If you said to yourself, that was good, but I could perhaps use some more. I am not sated in my B tickers selling puts. I want more put selling in tickers that have B's in them. If you said that to yourself, then A, that's a weird thing to say to yourself. And B, you're in luck because we got you covered. Next up, our Eye of Sauron moves its gaze a little bit farther afield. It's still in the energy space, though. We're talking BE. This is Bloom Energy Corp, trading 1876. This is also a very ironically similar saga, though. And also, these make solid oxide fuel cells. So we're hanging out in a similar space to what we were just talking about. A year ago, again, similar levels to what we were just saying with BP. 1792, it's rallied up to about 22, then sold off to $13, actually $12.37. That was the low on November 2nd. Then, like a lot of the meme-heavy names, this thing rallied hard. February 8th was trading its 52-week high of nearly $45, $44.95. So this thing rallied from about 12 and change all the way up to about 45 in February. And like a lot of the meme names, including our friend we just talking about, Ballard, it couldn't maintain that level. By March 8th, it was trading 25 again, sold off to 18 3/4 in May, tried to rally a bit, got up to about 28. So rallied about $10 in June, all the way up to June 28th. Then it sold off back to around the 20 level. And right now it's down to about 18 3/4 where we find it today. All right, now back out to the put front here. We've got the AAPL 16 puts. That makes more sense. The AAPL 16 puts going up for 20 cents. They were through the bid by a nickel, 12,120 times out there, listeners. All right. And then that's a 57 vol if you are curious. But then they said, you know what? We like those so much, we're going to do some more. They came in and did some more for 25 cents, 3,030 times. And then looks like they did 1,267 for 20 cents again later. So a total of about 17,000 of these have gone up on the day. Again, another pretty sizable line in the sand. Mr. Meatball, looks like we have a twofer today in the odd block. We had, first off, a line in the sand in Ballard Power. Then perhaps, dare I say it, maybe the same person coming in and deciding, I'm going to also draw a similar line in the sand, similar premium level, similar price level, similar industry, this time in Bloom Energy, sir. What do you think of these?
Well, we're noticing a theme here, aren't we? They're all about energy, and they're all about size up put selling. I'm wondering if it's the same customer. You got to wonder whether it's somebody that is just in there unloading puts on a whole bunch of energy stocks, and it's part of a portfolio. It legit could be the same guy.
It does have the whiff of the same customer, but it is not often that we see almost the exact same trade and the exact same name, the same size, same expiration cycle. They're both in October. This has the whiff of the same customer. What do you folks think? Think it's the same customer, or is it just a very, very, very coincidental trade? Either way, we shall find out. We'll keep an eye on both of these. We'll find out pretty quickly how they fared. And that's enough B-related short puts. And you're saying to yourself, I would like short puts in a completely different industry. We got you covered. Let's go out to Children's Place. Ticker symbol PLCE. Trading right now right around $84. Actually rallying today. One of the few names that's rallying, up 80 cents. They own Children's Place. They own Children's Baby Place. They also own Gymboree, a lot of obviously children's-oriented retailers, clothing, toys, that sort of thing. Let's see. Trading right now about $84 on the year. Let's see. A year ago, you can imagine, probably not the best for them. Not a lot of folks going out to Gymboree in the midst of the pandemic. Their low on the year was $24.15. That was about a year ago. And then they kind of rallied from there. They hit, wow, that's a pretty aggressive rally. By December, they were trading $47. So nice pop for them. Then they continued their upward swing. By February, they were trading $77. So they got caught up maybe in the meme frenzy. By March, they were trading about $83. And then they kind of sold off a bit back into the 70s for a while, hung out there for a while, then had a nice pop from 71.5 all the way up to 90 in mid-May, by right around May 17th. And they bounced around that 100 level for a while, sold off again to about 80, looks like about 79 actually on July 19th. Hung out in the 70s to high 80s range. Then in August, they started rallying again. They went from 82.5 all the way up to, looks like their 52-week high of about 107.33. That was back in early August, about the 12th or so. Hung out there ever so briefly and then sold off again down to where we find ourselves right now, 77. Before bouncing again this week up to about 83. So again, been an interesting, torrid year out here for Children's Place. A lot of vol in Children's Place. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron found out here. We got puts yet again, listeners, and the 70 strike. This time they're not really playing that close to the fire, but they're getting some juice for these. They sold these for $1. 4,180 of the AAPL 70 puts went up on the bid for $1. That's about a 64 vol. The stock was a little bit lower, 83.5. Not that much lower right now. There are no earnings in this. So Mr. Meatball, again, the 52-week low is $24. So that's probably playing into that a little bit. But still, they got $1 for these nearly $14 out of the money puts, sir, with only, about a month or so to go here. What do you think of these in everyone's favorite Gymboree owner, Children's Place, sir?
It's a nice, old, Little Mark was a Gymboree kid. Love Miss Joanne that was working there. And yeah, this makes a lot of sense. It's a nice yield for something way out of the money. If you don't think it's going to get there, it's a quick way to pick up a nice little bit of income. Don't hate it.
Yeah, I also do not hate these. And we see the earlier ones, getting 16.5 cents. This guy at least is getting $1. Granted, he's diving into some potentially perilous waters, so he's being rewarded for that, but still, not a small amount of juice to be found out there. You know what else is to be found? It's Monday. Let's go see if we can find Uncle Mike again. It is time for the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right. Welcome to the strategy block, the portion of the show where Uncle Mike holds court with some options, wit, and/or wisdom, perhaps some more personal anecdotes about the trauma inflicted by Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus the Butler Beefcake. Mr. Uncle Mike, I believe you teased us with tales of an upside fly, sir. So have at it. The floor is yours.
Okay, so I first want to start by taking us back to the lovely years of 2016 and 2017. Back when we used to tell ourselves there's no way that Donald Trump is a single-digit VIX president, but yet he was somehow for a couple of years. And in that time, what oftentimes I would do is if we'd have a dip in the market, such as today, although we didn't have too many of them like we've had today, but when we'd have a dip in the market or a down day, it was fairly simple, just buy an out of the money call. And I enjoyed doing that just because at first I didn't, because I'll be honest with you, in the Trump years, I bought more out of the money calls than I'd ever have in my entire life, I'm convinced. But with that, what I liked about that setup was the fact that if I was wrong, well, I didn't have that much money on the table. But if I was right, then if the markets were to go higher, the vol wouldn't come down that much because it was already so gosh darn low. And you could profit from the gamma on that if the markets would go your way. Now, we're in a time now to where life is obviously very different than it was in 2016, 2017, when we have the VIX up in the 20s now. And you can't really do that because let's say you were to buy an out of the money call, unless the market goes up a lot, you're probably not going to profit from it because volatility is going to come out so fast. You're not going to profit from gamma per se, just because of the fact that you're going to have to wait till it goes in the money, in my opinion, before you're going to make any serious money on it. So you really can't do what was done back in 2016, 2017. So what I'm looking to do, or what I've been doing a little bit this year, is I've been buying out of the money butterflies. And the way on days like today, or on if I'm looking to just do something to where I want to get some skin in the game, I'm in a similar market sentiment that I was back in 2016 or 2017. If I'm ever looking to do something like that as kind of a replacement for an out of the money call, I like an out of the money butterfly. Now, a couple of things with them. I like going maybe 1 month out, something like that. I don't like going too far out. Maybe somewhere between 4 and 7 weeks typically is what I'll look to do. But what I think is really important with that is that as the market increases, you could make money because you'll be ultimately bullish on the fly in and of itself. And so what I like doing with it is that I like to get out of them before they get to the wings. Now, I can't say I've done that every time. Sometimes they've gapped up and I've had to work around it, of course. But the reason with which I like doing that is that once you get within the wings of the butterfly and getting closer to the body, if you will, you're really not going to get a lot of benefit from it until you get really close to expiration. And by benefit, meaning the time decay on it. Of course, you look at the expiration day risk reward of a butterfly and you're thinking, holy cow, that can be 10 to 1. Why would I ever want to buy a call ever again? Well, it's not quite that simple because the value of the body of the out of the money butterfly will increase so much to where it'll work against you. You really won't make that much. So ultimately what I'm trying to do with this is, let's say I were to invest 50 cents into something like this. If I can get out at between 90 cents and $1.10, that's usually where I think that probably the best spot to get out at in a market like this, to where if we do have if we do come back and buyers come in today or tomorrow or whenever, and markets do what they do, then it's difficult to get much more than that, quite honestly. If you want to wait till expiration and try and bleed every penny out of it, you can. That's one thing you can do, but quite frankly, good luck on doing that. Let me know how that ends for you. So if you get into that situation where it's a little bit too close, then sometimes you have to either hedge it or get out of it or something along those lines. But ultimately, what I'm looking for is for an increase and able to be able to get out before it goes in the money. And that is the strategy block for today.
Thank you for that, Uncle Mike. As we keep on rolling, let's see if we get some listeners on real quick. Mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, welcome to the Mail Block. This one just came in during the show, so someone's obviously concerned about you. This comes from Ron G. Uncle Mike. He says, it's not an Uncle Mike kind of day. He looks like he's in a country lockup on his Twitter feed today. I'm not sure. I haven't checked what you've posted, Mr. Uncle Mike, but you appear to have given him cause for concern. He also says, can you guys talk about wash sale rules with rolling spreads? Seems to be a lot of controversy on the subject. Love the show. My P&L is swelling up. Well, I'm glad to hear that. It sounds like maybe you took some of our advice to perhaps be diligent with your positions, perhaps do a little bit of hedging to the downside, and also, of course, take those hedges off when they're working for you. So either way, glad to see it. Uncle Mike, A, are you in county lockup today on Twitter? I'm not sure what he's referring to. And then B, do you have any thoughts on wash sale rules with rolling spreads?
Okay. I purposely try and do my Twitter feeds from a different spot as often as possible, sometimes from my car, sometimes from my front yard. So that's just kind of the mystery. I was just kind of curious to see if anyone ever noticed if I was in a different spot. And apparently they did. So no, I'm not in county lockup, but my location will remain unknown.
I see what he's referring to now. Yes, you're like right in front of like a white brick wall. It looks like you are in prison. Yes. That's hilarious.
So my location will remain elusive. I will never tell anyone where I'm at. But anyway, in terms of wash sale rules with rolling spreads. So first off, what is the wash sale? The wash sale is if you sell a stock and you want to take a loss on it, you cannot buy the stock again for another 30 days. My understanding of the wash sale, and I am not an accountant by any means, is if you buy something similar to it, then you would it still could be considered a wash sale. However, I am not an accountant, so don't take my word for it. I would make sure that you would check with your accountant on such a thing. But yeah, my understanding is, let's say you sold Google or a stock that you wanted to take a loss on, and then you bought calls on Google the next day, then still wouldn't be able to account for a loss if you were to do something like that. So I imagine, and once again, I'm not 100% on that. I can't give tax advice, or my compliance people will put me in county lockup. So, but from my understanding of it, with rolling it, you really you would not be able to take losses on it. But once again, check with your accountant.
Mr. Meatball, A, do you have any thoughts on rolling spreads and impacting wash rules? And also, have you seen Uncle Mike's latest video from prison? It's funny.
I've not seen his video from prison. My understanding is that options do not fall under the same wash sale rules as individual stocks do. That's my understanding, is that they're treated as total positions. But again, I'm not a tax accountant. I don't play one on TV. This would be something that would be good to call your accountant or your broker and ask them what they know.
Yeah, you're probably better off starting with your broker. Good luck finding a good accountant who is familiar with all the nuanced wash sale rules around the derivatives space. Not many of them out there, unfortunately, in my experience. So maybe start with your broker and perhaps go from there. As we keep on going into our final segment, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block. Let's see how the action is going really quickly on our early voting in our VIX poll here. A very elevated, still winning north of 26, a little bit less now, about 36.4%. Number two in the frothy range, 20 to 23, with about 27.3%. So we skipped the whole middle range there. That's only 18.2% for elevated, 23 to 25.99 at Those of you saying bubbling, aka below 20, at an 18.2. I'll leave it to you to discern whether bubbling should be higher than frothy or not. These are the semantic arguments of our day. Instead, let's go around the horn. Let's start with the greasiest of Meatball. Mr. Meatball, sir. You already played our crystal ball, but if you want to amend yourself, given where we are right now, have at it. And then B, what is lighting up your tape for the rest of this week, sir, until we can gather here together on Thursday?
I mean, well, we got a bit of a market sell-off that I think we need to be paying close attention to. And then we do have the Federal Reserve this week. So that's another thing to keep an eye on, and whether that could be a spot where markets either really tank or turn themselves around.
Yes, all eyes on the Fed. You're going to get some of that quote-unquote Fed spookage. How much of that is being played out today in the markets? That's up for debate as well. As we're going out to Uncle Mike. Is he in lockup? Is he not? If so, he must be running out of his time on his one allotted phone call. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of this week until Thursday?
If I ever was in lockdown, I would make it a point to try to do the option block somehow with my one phone call. That would be wonderful. What I'm looking at is I want to see if we can actually level off throughout the rest of the day today. And if we do, like I said earlier, I will consider dipping my toe in the water with getting some more delta exposure on this. And then the other thing that I'd like to mention is that we are actually positive right now compared to where we were at the beginning of the show. So that's always an exciting thing. I believe we're 2 points above where we were at the beginning of the show. So at this rate, we'll only be down 1.9% by the end of the day.
All right, everybody. That music means we've come to the end of our first leg of our epic sojourn on the network today. If you're in a secret club, you're listening live, stay tuned. We'll be back in exactly an hour to break down the wild, wondrous, mysterious world of crypto derivatives. Going to talk the volume, the volatility, the skew, all that action, and a whole bunch more out there in Bitcoin, ETH. All your favorites usually make it on the show every week on the Crypto Rundown. Of course, tomorrow, like I mentioned, got that crazy one-off. Should be super fun. Deep dive into pro-level blackjack. You wanted it. Hey, we're here for you folks. You folks asked us to do it, so we're doing it. Don's willing to do it. Deep dive, Hall of Fame level blackjack tomorrow. Get those Q&A questions in now. It's going to be a popular one, I got a feeling. And if you're not part of the secret club, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. So you can join in all this crazy fun stuff we have going on over there. And speaking of things going on, Mr. Meatball, you got a thing or two going on. If folks want to check it out, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, head over to optionpit.com. We're putting out great content every day on volatility in the VIX. You do not want to miss it.
Optionpit.com to learn more. I think Uncle Mike might have a cool little gimmick on his hands, the old "Where in the World is Uncle Mike" thing for his videos. Mr. Uncle Mike, if they want to play along with you, where should they go? What should they do?
By all means, follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW. And if you're interested in working with a financial advisor who's not in jail, check out my website, stcharleswealth.com.
There you go. stcharleswealth.com is the place to go. And we got to go on out of here. Remember, if you're listening live, we'll pump some fun stuff into the live chat. We'll be back in exactly an hour with the Crypto Rundown. If you're listening after the fact, just hit next. It'll be there waiting for you. See you here tomorrow in the Secret Club for our Pro Q&A session. Then back again on Wednesday, Education Wednesday. Got Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio, your twofer that you all know and love out there. Then back again on Thursday, episode 2 of the Option Block. We'll see you then.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.